Snorter, Communications Coordinator with the American Numismatic Association, and I'm here today at the Phoenix Convention Center for the National Money Show. We have a lot of interesting things on display here, including this short snorter display. It's on the far right side of the convention, but it's got a lot of interesting information, a really cool short snorter, and I'm going to have Thomas Sparks here tell you a little bit more about it.
Thanks, Amanda.
You're welcome.
Okay, so this is the short snorter of Major General Clayton Lawrence Bissell that belongs to the Sarasota Rare Coin Gallery, Jeff Garrett, and it's currently on loan to the Short Snorter Project. And Major General Bissell was a World War I pilot with the United States Air Service. He was an ace in between the wars. He was on General Billy Mitchell's staff, and he was involved with the 1924 round-the-world flight. In World War II, he was the 10th Air Force Commanding General under Vinegar Joe Stilwell. And then in August of 1943, he joined the War Department Assistant Chief of Staff for Intelligence. And he was also the head of the War Department Historical Program, and he was a short snorter. His short snorter is signed by at least 291 admirals and generals of World War II, 17 presidents and prime ministers, and 37 ambassadors and ministers. It also has 5 complete sets of really extremely rare Allied military currency perforated specimen notes. Some of the highlights of his short snorter with signatures, field marshals, chief air marshals. Here's the signature right here of Field Marshal Alexander, very important in the North Africa campaign. This short snorter here is signed on one side by General Chiang Kaishek, Chinese General the Kuomintang. And on the other side, it's signed by his wife, Mei Ling Sung Chiang, also known as Madam Chiang Kai-shek. This short snorter here is signed by General Douglas MacArthur and Admiral Bull Halsey. It's also signed by Lana Turner and Avita Culp Hobby. She was the first director of the Women's Army Corps. If you've ever been through Houston Hobby Airport, that's her family. There's a short snorter here that's also signed by Chiang Kai-shek. This is his signature here. And then there's a note down here that's signed by Wild Bill Donovan, who was the first director of the OSS, which became the CIA. This note here is signed by Winston Churchill, and also by the senior ranking staff that was probably signed at the Potsdam Conference in 1945. The reason I say that is because of all the people that are present on this note, highest ranking of the British military. This note here is signed on one side by General of the Army Dwight D. Eisenhower and General of the Army George C. Marshall. On the other side, it's signed by Harry S. Truman, and it's signed also by General of the Army Hap Arnold, Fleet Admiral William Leahy, and Fleet Admiral Ernest J. King. Those are all 5 stars. This is an interesting specimen here. This says that this is a piece of the paper envelope of one of the Japanese bombing balloons which crossed the Pacific and landed in the United States in March 1945. Go around to the back side here. There's some additional specimen perforated Allied military currency, a complete set, extremely rare notes. This Turkish 50 Kuros note is signed by the ambassador to Turkey, but it's also signed by a crew of a B-17 that was down at Side, Turkey on August 10th, 1944, and it was down at Side, Turkey on July 28th, 1944, and there was a missing aircrew report that was issued for these guys, so they were missing in action. And then they were found, and it was a banquet that was held at the Gar restaurant, and the last notation on the note says, "Loving tonight." Down here, there's a Hawaii overprint silver certificate that's signed by Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz, and it's also signed by Air Vice Marshal Hugh Pugh Lloyd of Great Britain. He was the commander designate of Tiger Force, and that was when they were planning the invasion of Japan. There's an interesting note here. It's a Allied military currency 50-cent note that is typed on there, 3 Doolittle flyers who spent entire war in Japanese prison. Staff Sergeant Jacob DeShazer, Captain Charles J. Nielsen, Captain Robert L. Height. And it was signed on the 5th of September, 1945, 3 days after the signing surrender on the battleship Missouri. The interesting story about DeShazer, I'll give a little pitch for his book, Return of the Raider. While he was in captivity, he became a Christian, and he decided that if he survived the war, he'd give his life to Christ. And so he came back to the States, he got his divinity degree, and he went back to Japan as a missionary. And one of the gentlemen that he met there was a ex-Japanese naval aviator named Mitsuo Fuchida. He led the raid on Pearl Harbor. They became friends, Fuchida became a Christian, and they would go out evangelizing together in Japan. And then Fuchida moved to the United States, and some friends at my church said, "Oh yeah, I remember when he came to the Bible Baptist Church in Bozeman and he preached." So I thought that was pretty cool. This note down here, it's a Cuban 1 peso note, and on the back it's signed by R. Henry Norweb. He was the owner of the Norweb specimen 1913 Liberty nickel that is now in the Smithsonian. And this was when he was ambassador to Cuba. Jeff Garrett thought that was pretty cool because at one time Jeff Garrett was a co-owner of the Walton specimen 1913 Liberty nickel. Last but not least, signed by Blood and Guts, George S. Patton.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to give us a little tour of the short snorter that you have here on display. Again, this is Jeff Garrett's short snorter, and as you can see, it's signed by many, many people and includes a lot of rare forms of currency.